episode number 205 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. So today I'm welcoming a guest that I actually met at my kids' school, and she's another mother in the PTSA that is going to help me on some projects. And we started talking and we had a great conversation, and it turns out that she had a very rare condition called cholestasis of pregnancy. And when I told her I was doing acupuncture for fertility, and then I mentioned also the podcast, we said, wow, this would be a really good thing to bring up because she had a very rare condition, which most people who do have this condition don't really know what to look out for. So we talked about how this might be a really great thing to talk about, especially with Infant and Pregnancy Loss Awareness Month. So a bit more about Donna Benavides, who is my next guest. She is a mother who experienced cholestasis of pregnancy. Her journey with ICP began with her first pregnancy in 2003, when her son Jorden tragically passed away in utero at 37 weeks and 5 days due to the high-risk pregnancy cholestasis. In 2008, she began her work with Itchy Mom's website, and in 2012 became the founder of ICP Care, nonprofit. She has a Bachelor of Science degree and has practiced yoga for 12 years, completing her RYT 2000 yoga teacher training. She has since enjoyed teaching as a certified prenatal yoga teacher. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Welcome to the podcast, Donna.
Thank you so much.
So it's so
grateful to
cool
be here.
how we met. We just kind of randomly started talking, and I was like, "Oh, cool! Like somebody else who's interested in lifestyle, yoga,
Lifestyle.
like is spiritual." So it was really cool how we started uncovering all these similarities. But then you talked about something actually really important, which I would love for you to share your story and share how you got to founding your own nonprofit.
Yeah, so my story started back in the year 2002. My husband and I were going to start a family. We were ready to go full speed ahead with having our first baby. And so I had no issues, thankfully, becoming pregnant, and I had a healthy pregnancy. Everything was going wonderful. And I'd had been healthy my pretty much my entire life. I didn't have any issues. And then come week 33 within my pregnancy, I began to have a symptom itching. So I didn't think anything really of it, but then the itching really progressed and started to get worse. So in other words, it was intermittent, but it was also would be a little bit more pronounced during the evening at night. And then it was just really unusual because it was an itch that you couldn't relieve. And it wasn't in just one particular location or like a mosquito bite. It was really something that you couldn't really like get relief from.
Mm-hmm.
I personally thought it was maybe something I was using that was different, maybe the detergent from, the laundry, maybe it was a lotion. I was just trying to, figure out what was going on. And I brought it up to my doctor, and I was being seen by a group of doctors, OBs. It was a group of four in the practice. And then my doctor that I saw, the first doctor, she said, "Oh, well, try some hydrocortisone cream to see if that's going to help to alleviate." But that indeed, and I took advice. I'm like, okay, maybe. So then I went to the pharmacy, and I got the cream and I used it, and to no avail. It didn't help at all. And then I did some research online, and then sure enough, I saw some information about, this high-risk pregnancy condition called intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy. And it is somewhat uncommon rare. Again, this was 19 years ago. So, what was known and really followed by healthcare professionals back then was a little different. And also, how many patients the healthcare professional may have been, exposed to and treated, again, is another factor. So I went back to the doctor, and I saw another one from the practice, and I said, I tried the hydrocortisone cream that the doctor suggested, but it's not helping at all. It's not helping at all. So she said, well, let me run some blood work and let me see if it's this. And doctors sometimes they just don't want to scare you. They just don't want to give you all the information about what potentially you may have. And I understand that, but at the same time, it's just like, you know,
You need to know,
it's
yeah.
you need to know. So it was after this appointment that that's when I researched it. But and then I got the blood work done. It took a couple days to get back. It's called the bile acid blood test, and that is what's used to pretty much diagnose cholestasis of pregnancy. And and I wasn't diagnosed yet. This was at week 35. I went back home, still was suffering, and the itching got progressively worse. And again, it was something that you couldn't relieve. It makes you feel like you're going crazy. It makes you feel
Hmm.
like something is really mentally like wrong with you. It really messes with you in that respect emotionally. And imagine you're pregnant, you're trying to protect your baby, you find out you have a high risk pregnancy, you feel like your body's kind of failing you.
Hmm.
And that's definitely what I was feeling. But since I've always been healthy, I didn't really, and being an optimistic person, I didn't think so, like, so negatively. I kept on with going to my appointments and keeping a positive outlook. So when I went back for my 36-week appointment, the blood work indeed had returned, and I was diagnosed with ICP, and my levels were quite high.
Hmm.
So again, having been a healthy person, I was like in a deer in headlights. I'm like, okay, my levels are high. Okay,
Hmm.
being seen by a doctor. And then my husband and I had spoken to her, have you had another patient or other patients that had this Irish pregnancy condition? And she had, but again, it's every doctor may have been in a different level of knowledge and how to treat. And then because this condition has, it does have various other symptoms, including meconium passage, which is one of the worser symptoms,
Hmm.
or excuse me, risks. But what the symptom is right upper quadrant pain, which I didn't have. I just had mainly the itching. And then your stool, excuse me, could be very light in color, and then
Hmm.
your urine could be very dark, so very like an apple juice kind of color.
Hmm.
My urine was a little dark, but and so my levels were high. I Again, we spoke to the doctor, and my husband and I asked her some questions, and or she said that I would be coming back for non-stress tests to kind of monitor the baby, and I would need to be induced early. Medicine wasn't mentioned, although there is a medicine that is used to treat gallstones, to help dissolve
Hmm.
gallstones. That is used for intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy.
Hmm.
And it's called ursodeoxycholic acid, or ursodiol, or Actigol as the brand name. But so I wasn't prescribed medicine. I didn't know I needed medicine. I didn't know if that was going to help me. My levels were quite high, but I did know that, we did have a plan in action. We did have some, non-stress tests that were going to be taking place. I was going to be induced earlier and such. So I went home, and I continued to suffer because I wasn't being treated in regards to what medicine that may have helped, but also my levels were quite high, severe. So because my levels were severe, in a severe range, I was in a different category. than somebody maybe who had lower. And because I presented quite differently at night is when I would itch more. But when I would go into my doctor's appointments during the day, I really didn't itch too much. So she may have been comparing me to her other patients, saying, "Oh, okay, look, she's not really complaining so much." And again,
Hmm.
I honestly, just like everybody has different pain tolerances,
Right.
you have different itch tolerances. So I definitely fit into that category as well.
Hmm.
There's women that have this pregnancy condition that they itch so badly that they will scratch themselves to the point of bleeding. They will
Hmm.
actually like, you know, pierce their skin with their nails or whatever they're using to scratch the area of their body, and they will cause themselves to bleed. I never did that, but I indeed felt horribly itchy and unbearably itchy. And again, towards the evening more. And so in my case, again, the plan was to get induced at 38 weeks. I went back. I did have additional blood work to see how my bile acids were progressing or what was going on. And the second round that came back were at 80, so they were still high, but they were lower than the first initial tests. And again, it fluctuates depending on what you eat, so that makes sense, right? What you're eating and then the bile is. So at 30, I want to say at 37 weeks and 4 days, I went in for my non-stress test, and he passed the test. He was doing good. And then that evening I went home, and I also had I think an additional blood test that day. So that evening I went home and I was going about my day, my evening, and want to say it was probably like at sometime like at maybe 1 in the morning or something like that. I woke up because he was moving around quite a bit more than usual, right? So being a first time mother and really not understanding again, like what's maybe a red flag, you're
Hmm.
thinking, oh, well, if he doesn't move, that's like a red flag, right? But it's a red flag. If your baby's moving a little bit more aggressively, it's because something's wrong for sure. It's distress. And nowadays they have so many amazing things that help you to kick count, not only like for you to do it yourself, but also apps that help you with the kick counts that again could help you like be like a red flag, like that something's wrong. So I woke up and I was like, oh, okay, I understand you're uncomfortable. And and I was like talking to him. And I'm like, I know you're uncomfortable. I'm sorry. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna eat a snack. So I had like crackers and something, I don't know, nuts or something, and then I went back to sleep. I went back to sleep, and then my husband, I'm trying to remember if he went to work after me or before me, but we were both going to work that day, the next morning. So I went to work, and I was going about my day, trying to hurry up to get to work, and then as I was driving, I'm like, gosh, I don't know if I felt him move. I've saw a feeling of dread like set in because
Hmm.
your intuition and then your my antenna was just like, okay, something's not right. So then I called my husband. I'm like, and I got to work and I went inside really quick and I said, I don't. And I talked to I think some of my coworkers. I'm like, I don't know, they're like, you should go to the hospital, And I was like, so I called my husband. I'm like, I'm leaving to the hospital. I was like white as a ghost,
Wow.
And so then I went to the hospital, which was not too far from where I live, but farther from where I worked. And then I went in, and the nurses, got the Doppler, and we're trying to find the heartbeat, but we're having no luck,
Oh.
no heartbeat. So then, they are not allowed to say anything. So the nurse was like, okay, I'm just gonna get the doctor. So the doctor came in, the Doppler again, tried to find the heartbeat, nothing. And then she said, okay, well, we're gonna take you to the room right across, which is the ultrasound room where they can do an ultrasound to see what's going on. And again, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, everything's okay. Trying to be optimistic. I don't know if I was fooling myself, but so I laid on the bed to to have the ultrasound, and she did the ultrasound, and then she said the words that no mother ever wants to hear is, I'm so sorry that there's no heartbeat. So at that point in time, from that point on, it felt like a complete like a movie. It was like I was a character in the movie, and it wasn't me. I was
Wow.
just looking at it. I let out a big sigh, cry, anguish of heart-wrenching pain for knowing that my son's heart was not beating
Oh,
anymore and he had died. He'd passed. At that point on, I definitely was in shock, state of shock. I know it was something again that I wish no mother would ever have to experience. And it's really one of the reasons why, I do what I do since losing him. And after knowing, that he passed away, again, I was in shock. I was living a movie. It wasn't me. Because, that's the way your body's in survival mode. So it was, my husband had arrived. Unfortunately, after I got the news, and then, we cried together. We talked, there's hard decisions that have to be made. We talked together to find out, well, the doctor asking us, when we wanted to have him, when I wanted to give birth to him. We had a choice to go back home or to stay, and I didn't want to go back home. I just knew
yeah.
that, it was time. And I was induced. I was induced with him, and thankfully I was able to give birth to him vaginally. And I really want to say that having him he was my first son. He made me a mother. His life has really made a difference and impacted so many lives with the nonprofit organization, ICP Care.
Hmm.
Um, he, when he was born, for the split second that he was born, I want to say a minute, I felt so much happiness, so much joy because he was born and he was my son, and I was holding him finally because I had carried him for 37
Yeah.
weeks and 5 days, you know, loving him and caring for him as best I could. But unfortunately, I had this Irish pregnancy condition that,
Hmm.
that nobody in my family ever had. And it's genetic, so it stems from my father's side of the family. Women with IVF can also be affected with this because of the hormone level.
Hmm.
It's multifactorial, really. There's, different factors that can cause a woman to have cholestasis of pregnancy, and also if you have underlying liver issues.
Hmm.
That's another big thing, that if you have hepatitis, if indeed you have other underlying liver conditions or issues, you are very at a higher risk of developing cholestasis of pregnancy during your pregnancy. So after having my son, we spent time with him in the hospital. We, back then they didn't have like Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, which is an amazing nonprofit that offers, photographers donate of their time to take pictures of babies and, children that have passed, to share, to keep, because that's really special. So,
Hmm.
I did have that didn't exist back then for me, but I did have some pictures taken, and I do have that and for memory of my son. And we had a service for him a week later. We buried him. He was buried. We had a funeral. And, again, I was not in a headspace to do anything. My husband and was the one who was able to do all that, plan everything,
Hmm.
because, you know, I was just not in a headspace to be there. I definitely knew that I didn't let what happened to me, put me in a headspace of, I'm not never going to be able to have a child. I knew that I was going to have my family. It was whatever it was going to take, I was going to do it,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And I definitely set out to help whoever I could by sharing my story, and also, being involved with helping to save, future cholestasis pregnancies, babies' lives. And that's exactly what I've done all these years. I was blessed to have two other sons,
Hmm.
and I did have cholestasis of pregnancy with them as well.
Hmm.
But it was quite differently. I went to a maternal fetal medicine specialist. I was being seen by high risk pregnancy doctors
Right.
who had experience, and also they're just in another caliber. They're amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
I love
I've
them.
heard.
I had a
Yeah, I
great
have one of
team.
my patients who has, and she said it's such a difference. It's a game changer.
It is. This is how I said it the other day. I had a meeting with our team. I think it was with I want to say our ambassador teams. I said it's like having a warm blankie. Like you feel so like supported and like comforted and like
Yeah,
secure with an MFM. That's just my
that's
experience. But
amazing.
again,
Yeah.
so my sons are teenagers now. Yeah, and they've helped me, throughout with the nonprofit as well. They've been involved. They're on our Facebook page. They've been there
Amazing.
on our website.
Yeah.
But with them, my treatment was quite different. I was treated differently. I had the medicine that helped manage my bile acid levels that are dangerous. So the worst case scenario, is stillbirth, which I experienced with my son Jordan. Colonium passage that I had mentioned earlier, that's a risk. Preterm labor is a risk. So preterm labor I experienced with my third son, Evan, 30
Hmm.
weeks, and I had to go to the hospital twice to have the labor stopped with IVs, and thankfully it did work, or else he would have been born at 30 weeks. I would have had a preemie, but he was born at 36 weeks. So both my other two sons as well were induced at 36 weeks. Well, my son Branden at 35 weeks, 5 days. But so part of the treatment, so you understand, it's like there's no cure for cholestasis of pregnancy. There's a lot of research that needs to be done still to really
Hmm.
completely understand it. But the current treatment is to treat with medicine to be able to manage it, but also to, depending on your bile acid level. So in my
Hmm.
case, I had severe cholestasis of pregnancy. So my pregnancies, I had to be induced sooner rather than later. So the
Hmm.
window is anywhere from 36 weeks to 39 weeks these days, but it
Hmm.
really depends on the bile acid level and also individual care, how you are as a patient, how you're doing. And yeah, so our nonprofit is really determined to help mothers who experience intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy. I know that's like a really long,
Hmm.
long word. So, and for short, and it's called ICP, but or the US mainly called cholestasis of pregnancy.
Hmm.
So we're here. Our organization here is here to help deliver, healthy babies, by
Hmm.
helping mothers, families, and anyone who's impacted with this condition. And our mission is to provide patient support, education, raise public awareness, support the advancement of research, and to improve healthcare practices. So how we do that is in so many ways, but the gist of it is to really help connect, support, and educate and empower those, and also healthcare professionals. We do have
Yes.
a healthcare provider section in our website. We have a full Spanish website and also a support group for our Spanish community. We have support groups for our postnatal moms and after pregnancy, and obviously our main group, which is to really help anyone who just needs help in any way, shape, or form, questions with support. You do feel quite alone with this high risk pregnancy because unless you're experiencing or living it, you really can't understand. And our families and friends can be so supportive, and we appreciate it so much, but if there's nobody that can understand this better than us itchy moms.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I
Yeah,
mean, gosh, your story is so heart-wrenching. Like, it's really heartbreaking to hear what you went through and the fact that it's so unfortunate that I know it's rare, but that healthcare providers weren't able to do anything because it really was like a window that you could have been treated. And this is why it's so important. I think it's really important to raise awareness. And I'm so happy that you're here because I have a lot of my listeners are doing IVF and it does
right.
impact the liver. I mean, your liver has to detoxify all of those excess hormones. But yeah, I mean, there's so many aspects and triggers. So you were mentioning that it was also something that can be risky if you're doing IVF. So in some cases, it's not necessarily genetic.
Right. Right. So like I was saying, it's multifactorial. So it's
Yeah.
genetic. It could be genetic. It could be hormonal, which is
Hmm.
IVF, and it could be environmental as well.
Hmm.
And how it ties in is in those it being multifactorial is it can depend. For example, multiple pregnancies as well, twins and triplets, they're at a higher risk because obviously the hormone levels is increased, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we do find that to be also women with a progesterone therapy
Mm-hmm.
also can be at higher risk of also having cholestasis of pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
And then like had mentioned, the genetic component and all that. And again, it does skip generations, and then it does skip even pregnancies. So
Mm-hmm.
we do have, although it's anywhere from 60 to 80%, but within our support group, we've seen that it's usually 90% of the women will get it again, and they're
Mm-hmm.
recurrent in their subsequent pregnancy. So with me, I had it in all mine. Again, I was severe. I was high risk.
So it's definitely the liver component. So what is it exactly? Like what kind of condition in the liver that can cause it, and why is it because the hormones increase during pregnancy that it exacerbates that?
So the elevated levels of hormones in the pregnancy, so estrogen and progesterone, affect the transport of bile through the liver, so leading to elevated levels. So what happens is the normal bile flow is affected, and then it just ends up, being absorbed into our bloodstream, hence it being toxic, and then going
Mm-hmm.
through to the placenta and affecting the baby.
Got it. And so you were mentioning gallstone dissolving medications.
Exactly. So there is a medicine that is used to dissolve gallstones that has been used for, I want to say, since 1990s or something. It has been used, and it's called ursodeoxycholic acid,
Mm-hmm.
ursodiol or Actigol, and it does help to manage the bile acids. So in other words, for me, I with my second and my third pregnancy, I did take the medicine, thankfully, and I feel like it did make a difference with
Mm-hmm.
helping manage my levels, my bile
Mm-hmm.
acid levels, from being severe to being, kept at a more manageable level, to then be able to make decision when would be best to induce
Mm-hmm.
the pregnancy. I was actually taking quite a large number. It was at the tail end of my pregnancy at 35 weeks. I was taking about 2,100 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bile acid blood test that I took, I want to say 2 days before my son was born, my second son, my bile acid levels were at 69. So they were quite high. So I'm glad that we did decide to induce earlier. And it's interesting because it was during Hurricane Francis. So I live in South Florida, so we definitely had to make a decision based on that as well. And interestingly enough, he made the school cutoff of September 1st, which
Mm-hmm.
is also my father's birthday. And and
Mm-hmm.
my father's birthday is also September 1st, and my father passed away in 1999. So it was really beautiful to have that
Oh,
date just to
wow.
have as his birthday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. And so, what should people look out for? You were saying like itching, that's like a big factor. Are there other significant symptoms that people feel that they should say, oh, this is a red flag? You had mentioned also upper right quadrant,
Yes,
which is around where the liver gallbladder are.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
there could be pain there.
Yeah, so itching is definitely just the number one symptom. However, since itching in pregnancy is fairly normal, sometimes, healthcare professionals may think that, oh, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
However, that's when, just a simple blood test could kind of, rule that out. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you continue with symptoms, even though you had a normal blood test, bile acid blood test, and you continue with persistent symptoms of itching, you have to continue to ask for a blood test. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
simple blood test.
Yeah.
And it's just important because sometimes what we have seen in our community is that it could take up to like 6 blood tests until it shows in
Oh,
your
wow.
bile acid blood test. And
Yeah.
that's not for everybody. I'm just saying
Right.
this has happened. So this is something important because I think that it could be tricky because you're like, oh, okay, well, I got my blood test results and I don't have that because it came back negative, but hey, I'm still continuing with these symptoms. it could very well be that you do have cholestasis of pregnancy, or it could be something else that you have,
Hmm.
but you better safe than sorry, right? Continue blood
Absolutely.
test.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is exactly what I had mentioned earlier, the right upper quadrant pain. So the patient experience pain in the area of the liver. So
Hmm.
it's under the ribs, the right side of the ribs. And the reason for the pain is not really clear, but people who have had their gallbladders removed still, on occasion, they report continued pain even there, even if they have subsequent pregnancies. So
Hmm.
another myth is that, well, I don't have a gallbladder, you could still have this, ICP, you can still have
Hmm.
it. And among healthcare professionals too, that can kind of throw them for the loop, oh, you don't have your gallbladder,
Right.
no, it's
Yeah.
liver induced.
Wow.
So the pain may range for right upper quadrant in intensity. It could be mild. For
Hmm.
some women, it could be debilitating. It's just it radiates on the back under their right shoulder blade. They
Hmm.
feel like they're being like being stabbed or something, back there. It's just
Hmm.
crazy. But again, that is could be a symptom, and also dark urine,
Hmm.
like I mentioned, and also pale stool. So light colored stool is another red flag and another symptom. And then, in a small minority of patients, you have jaundice, yellowing of the skin and the
Hmm.
eyes. It's very uncommon though. It
Right.
occurs maybe in 10% or less of patients. But
Right.
again, it's something that's there. And then with all this, all this can cause depression, mild depression, and
Hmm.
that's not a symptom physically, but yeah, you are feeling depressed because you're going through all this, and
Of
it's
course.
it's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot. It takes a
And
mental toll. It
it's
really
interesting,
does.
like how you were saying you felt a couple times, like intuitively in your gut, something was off. And you
Yes.
kept trying and trying. And this is why ultimately, I mean, unfortunately, we cannot rely 100% on medical help. Like, we really need
Um,
to advocate for ourselves, which is why I think this is really important that you're here today. Like, I mean, this story is just, it's so sad. And there's so many different parts of it that, like, are heartbreaking. And yet, you've taken your story to create so much empowerment in so many people to help them avoid what you went through, which I think is remarkable. And I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say that it takes, they say it takes a village. In
Hmm.
in my case, it takes, we are 100% volunteer based. We are growing. We're a small nonprofit, 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We rely greatly on our beautiful volunteers,
Hmm.
our board members, and they all are women who have experienced ICP, intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy. And they've done so much amazing work, with our organization. We work as a team. I'm only one human being.
Hmm.
I do a lot,
Yeah.
sometimes too much.
Yeah.
But without every person, everyone in our team, really, we wouldn't be where we are, and we wouldn't be where we're headed, because we have so many amazing opportunities and amazing things, that we're working on, including a patient registry that's going to really allow us to support research in ways that weren't available to us. And again, research is really important and is needed and necessary.
Absolutely. I'll be closely watching what you're doing and helping as well in any way that I can. So I'm really happy that I met you, Donna. And for people listening and wanting to get more information, how can they find your organization? How can they learn more?
Oh, absolutely. So we are on icpcare.org, and we have amazing resources there. We have support group communities within Facebook that you can connect with us. We're on Instagram. We have a beautiful YouTube channel with stories that you can also find on our website, on our resource page that connects there. Just stories of, other lost stories, but also just happy, outcomes where, our organization has helped women be able to advocate for themselves. Our support group, our team has empowered, patients to be able to get the treatment that they really need to really have their baby delivered. happy and healthy. And that's what our mission is, our why.
Amazing. Well, I'll be putting all of those links on the episode notes. So if anybody wants to find them, that's where you can find them. And Donna, again, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it's so raw and so vulnerable, and just what you're doing right now to help so many women out there, couples, families, is remarkable. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the work that you do, because you're really making a difference in so many lives as well.
Oh. So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.